Yeah, well, talking about it, Tony, there's my cousin, right? Do you know Jimmy, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, he come down the other
The
week, and
nutter.
he is. I've never known a cockney like him. I mean, he's going round saying, "Going out tonight" and all this. You know, he goes around like that.
Yeah.
He, of course, he's got long hair now. You know, really long.
Has he?
Yeah.
You know that Kathy Tucker?
Yeah.
Well, I was, it's only last week. I was round where I live.
Yeah.
And she goes to me, go up to my gaff and get me radio down. I goes, what's gaff? You know, I didn't really know what it meant then, but, you know, I've heard it all the time.
That's just the same as Janie, my cousin. She turns around and says, says to us, well, my bloke's coming round tonight and all this, you know, going out somewhere, have a cup of tea.
Bloke's common, innit?
Yeah, well, you know, it's kind of cockney, you know what I mean? It's double Dutch and all this, really.
Yeah.
Compared to things like when I was up the road the other day, my mate turned around and says, I had a cut on my face. He said, what's happened to your boat race? Must have fell down the apple and pears and all this, you know. It was rather funny.
Laugh, yeah.
Yeah, it is a laugh. I quite
but
agree
it's all
there.
what they use. They always turn out with these new words, cockneys, didn't they? What's the new one?
You can have, say a geezer goes down the road and he says, they're like asking you to fight. I say, all right, brother, watch out. I say, I'll give you a 1-2 spank,
Yeah,
like they use. And then you got the, what's the beef pal and all this like, you know. You get all these sort of words. I mean, I was walking down the street the other day and a geezer said that to me. Yeah. How are you, pal? All right? And pal's a right cockney name.
Yeah.
There must be cockneys all over the country now, and people are wondering what they can't understand us. We can't understand them, and that's it.
Well, I was given away at 3 days old. I was a twin. My grandfather and grandmother brought me up. They had 7 men work for them, the carpenters and wheelwrights. I was always on my own, and my grandfather told me, always go out on your own and never let your left hand know what your right hand do. I could have been a carpenter. I might have had my grandfather's carpenter shops and that left to me. They were left to me. I'd had them. They could still have been a Brooks carpenter and wheelwright at Bolton. That was there 250 year, and I might have been there now. But the only thing is, I just didn't like the idea of being shut in. If I go out in the morning, I get home when I like, and I have my dinner when I like. There's always some food in the pantry, and I know there's some there, and I look after myself. I never worry about looking at a watch, because a man who looked at a watch and got to leave off at a certain time and bond time and that, he have his ideas. But in a factory, I can't see whether they're any better off than I am.
My first taste of cider, now that's rather funny because I wasn't all that old. I was somewhere about, 8-year-old when I had my first lot of cider. And I can tell you what happened. We used to go up and we used to tell the farmer's wife, see, we'll pick up the eggs, Mum. So we used to pick up the eggs purposely to go into the cellar, see. We used to go into our cellar. Brother as well, and we used to have these little coffee bottles, fill them up, down that, and that was marvellous as far as we was concerned.
But what did your mother say when you went home smelling of cider?
But we didn't let her know that, see. Oh, not on your Nelly. No. We used to go in the garden, and we used to pick off some parsley and chew it. You know, just turbo strong stuff like. We didn't like it, not like we did the cider, but anyway, that's what we done. Green house. Well, everything was all right until you was going to bed. Of course, we always had to kiss Mother goodnight, mind. Didn't matter what happened, you had to kiss her goodnight, otherwise it was for it. And she used to say, you've been eating that parsley again, William. Of course, and we couldn't tell her nothing about it. Look, we was dividing, see. So anyway, that went on for some time, and then after we got a bit, left school and all that, and got older, and Mother was dead against drinking, see, so we had to wait till we was, I expect I was 30, I expect, before we told her, for 30. And I said, Mother was on about this parsley, and I said, now look here, Mother, I said, why we used to eat this here parsley? I said, we used to go up and have a drink, I said, out in the cellar. I said, we had to eat that there, see? I said, so you wouldn't know we did it. Oh, you crafty bounder, because she never used to swear. You wasn't that type of person.
I was born on Barton Hill. There was 12 of us. Well, I know times were very, very hard because my mother used to go working between having her children down Tots the tailoring. And I remember I stayed home from school time and time again because I've had no shoes to wear. We had to wait and get some over the second-hand shop over the road. We didn't know what a cup of milk was, not when we were poorly. I used to stand behind my father's tea and wait for the top of his egg. Never knew what an egg was. When I left school, when I was 14, I went into service in a house at Redland. And it was 6 shillings a week. I used to have to clean the windows with newspaper, no dusters, and light the fires with paper. Well, I couldn't get the fires to burn with paper, so I used to buy a sack of sticks and carry them on the train at Lawrence Hill. And the workmen used to help me on with them and help me off with them in Redland. And I used to take these sticks and use them out my own money to light our fires with.
I well remember when I was a boy, that was at the Boer War. In Debenham they built a sort of an archway, you know, green leaves, etc., etc. Well, the next day the street was lined with people and children, and motor car come over the hill, not many of them about that time of day, and pulled up under this arch, and who do you think it was? That was the great Lord Kitchener. A very big soldier, I was told. He'd got pierced nose and a moustache, you know, and a bairn straight up his back was straight as a die. And he come that night to stay at Aspel Hall. Well, I think they was relatives. But anyhow, the next day, the Debenham volunteers and that mustered up at Aspel Hall, and people, and he inspected the volunteers. There he was, a finer body of men one never see before or after. And he walked up and down the lines, and there was a soldier walked behind him with a real drawn sword, and I wondered what that was for, but a boy told me that was in case somebody might try and do him in. Anyhow, all the parade was over, and that's a great deal for this part of the country, you know. Well, then come the moment for the railway. In the afternoon he boarded the train at Aspel and went off to Hawley, you see. And I don't suppose the railway had took such a wonderful personage before. And that was a very great day for all us round here.
I was in the same place, down this lane, myself, and I got my greyhound with me, and I wanted a rabbit. I only used to go out and get a rabbit when I'm not for Salem or nine. I just have a rabbit now and then. And I was down there, and this greyhound, I know there's a lot of rabbits over in this field, and my dog wouldn't go. And I got all on the edge, and I got his head in there, and I was pushing him, get him through. And he turned around and growled out and showed his teeth, and I myself, hello. But there was a keeper the other side of the edge, no wonder he wouldn't go through. And that was what he was telling me, there was a keeper there.
At that time, I had a black cocker spaniel. He was forever pouncing into the rushes and sedge for voles and mice, and usually he killed and he caught. I saw him pounce, but took little notice until he came to heel and started to follow along behind me, and then it seemed obvious he had something to show to me, and I could see his mouth all puffed out. As I put down my hand, so he opened his mouth, and to my surprise, out flew a Jenny Wren. Well, you know, you would have thought the little bird would have had all his wits scared out of him. But no, not he. He flew to a branch a few yards away, preened his feathers, and then whistled as though wanting to let the world know he was free. A glance down at the old dog showed him with his tail wagging like mad, and it was with a queer lightness of heart that I continued on my way.
Well, when the scarlet pimpernel blossom is closed, that's a sure sign of rain. We read, closed is the pink-eyed pimpernel, 'twill surely rain, I see with sorrow. Our jaunt must be put off tomorrow. And then, of course, there was rather funny things that used to be said about rain. Now, Tom Whittle, he was an old friend of mine, he used to say that the ploughboys years ago, they'd say to each other, perhaps in the stable, when it was raining, they'd be sheltering, you see, and one would say to the other, aye, more rain, more rest. And the farmer would overhear them. He'd say, what did you say, my boy? And the boy'd say, aye, more rain, more grass for the cow, sir. See, just to get out of it like that. And then George Hunting, you remember George Hunting, the sprout picking champion? Well, if it was raining out and we were working out in the fields, he'd say, aye, it's a few too many on one. Few too many spots on one person, you see, and go into the oval and get out of it. Few too many on one. And another saying that we used to hear quite often was, don't keep it off the ground. It'll do more good on the ground than on thy back. Get in the oval. See? That was another thing that used to be said about it. I was talking to a man the other night, and Will Spitz, he lives down the road, and he was on about these crows being at breaknecks. Well, they go round in circles, and then they come down like dive bombers, and that's a sure sign of rain. And he said to me, I thought it was rather an apt sort of a description, he said, that's when they start the cider making, he said, going round and round in circles.
Sweet lass of Richmond Hill, sweet lass of Richmond Hill, high crowns reside to call a mine, sweet lass of Richmond Hill.
This is Richmond, Yorkshire, where the lass of Richmond Hill was born. We have the curfew, which rings every morning at 8 o'clock, and the curfew at 8 o'clock at night. That is to get the apprentices out to work, and then they have to be indoors by 8 o'clock of the night time. And then, of course, we have the alberts, which are put up outside the mayor's house every Saturday for market day. And he rules the market. He has the right of the market as the mayor, his own prerogative. In those days, it was rough going, same as what it is today. And they used to take these albertiers and protect the mayor when he was on these processions and one thing and another. Another old thing is we are the only people in the kingdom which the town clerk, when we get a new town clerk, he must be sworn in by the Queen. And that's the only one that I know of in England.
Well, the horn and all noises of different descriptions, even the church bells, the origin of these were, in fact, to keep away evil spirits. And these was blown round the bride and bridegroom's house the night before they got married so that they'd be free from evil spirits. And this has continued up to about 20 years ago till it's become illegal, of course. But it is still done under cover of darkness, and the people still continue this practice in outlying places in the island.
Dulles has been used as a source of food in Ireland for as long as anyone can remember, and men have braved the winds and the tides since early times to gather this delicious edible seaweed. Jimmy explained that rock dulles was sweeter than tangled dulles, and he mixed them, and that was why there was always a great demand for his dulles, because of its wonderful flavour. In a couple of days' time, it was the Harvest Fair Day in Newton Ards, and Jimmy said that he needed to gather a lot of dulles, for the farmers loved to eat it at the fair. It gave them a good thirst for their porter. We packed as much dulles as we could into the bags, and before long there was a mountain of seaweed in the bottom of the boat. The tide started to rise and came sweeping across the rocks in small streams. Jimmy held the boat and ordered me into the stern. He let go our mooring rope and pushed the boat away from the rocks. The sun was sinking fast, and in its bright yellow light we made for the harbour. A fresh breeze sprang up from the shore, and Jimmy leaned a little more heavily on his oars. A flight of terns hovered close to us, and then moved away seaward with sharp cries. When we reached the pier it was almost dark, and we unloaded our cargo of dulles. Next morning Jimmy was up at the crack of dawn to spread the seaweed. All morning he sat on a pole watching the dulles dry. During that time he turned it occasionally to make sure it would be dried throughout, and when he was satisfied it was ready, he lifted it quickly in huge armfuls and stuffed it into Hessian sugar sacks, which he generally managed to get from the local shops for nothing. These were then loaded on the village carrier's lorry and taken away to be sold on Harvest Fair Day. Old Jimmy's long dead, and his boat was wrecked completely during the spring equinox gale. But the Dully men still leave the harbour for the Dulles Rocks, and each stretch of rocks is still as jealously guarded as it was in Jummy's time.
Well, one of the things that I have learned about being Irish is that invariably, when I go into, say, I go out to lunch or possibly out to dinner, some of my English friends immediately want to imitate the Irish accent, and I'm unhappy to say from personal experience that this is a most atrocious attempt. However, one has to smile and grin and bear it, you see. In fact, I remember on one occasion I was in doing business in Fleet Street, and a very nice chap came up to me and he said, "The top of the morning to you, Aidan." And I sort of smiled rather wanly, and I said rather tersely to him, "I have been 30 years in Ireland, and I have never heard in my life that expression." Unhappily, the poor boy was trying to be very pleasant, and he was most hurt by this observation, and later I had to come along and to mollify him. This is part of the whimsy which is attached, I think, to Ireland, and people like to be pleasant about it. They don't mean to be, English people, I should say, don't mean to be offensive. They just like to tease the Irish a little bit and use a bit of a brogue. But unhappily, only outside professional actors have I heard a very good Irish voice being done.
Edinburgh is a city of contrasts. We have some of the finest buildings, gardens and parks, and yet out of the normal tourist routes, some of the worst slums. The Royal Mile is a hodgepodge of old tenement buildings lovingly restored by the corporation, and across the other side of Princes Street we have the wide streets, Georgian squares and gardens of Britain's first new town, which is now over 200 years old. For 3 weeks of the year the city hosts the most varied arts festival in the world.
You should listen to these two for a minute. Cursing, slang and threatening each other as Glasgow Nyavs have done in Bobby's bar since dear knows when on the time-worn topic. Who's won the greater number of trophies, eh? Celtic. Admit it, don't be stupid. Rangers taught the world to play football, man. The thin one says he would sacrifice a chance to win the Pools just for the pleasure of seeing the fat one hung from Ibrox stand with his own Rangers scarf. The fat one promises to pray that another blade of grass never grows in Celtic Park. They smash the old Irish Catholic and Orange Protestant arguments at each other's teeth with commendable vehemence. The ritual has been enacted 1,000,000 and more times, and this current joust seems just like all the others that have gone before, except that the wee protagonist on the left is called Fu Yen, and the fat one on the right, Mohammed.
Well, you know, since the start of this new Inverness London direct air service every day, it's really first class for a businessman like myself. I can leave Inverness early in the morning, be down London by 10 a.m, get a complete day's work in London, catch the plane in the evening, 6 o'clock, have a nice dinner on the way up and a few drams, and get back into Inverness by, say 9, 9:15 or so. Just time to run down to the pub and have a pint and a dram before getting home for the night.
Robert Burns, Scotland's national bard, was an Ayrshire man, and by reputation he was a great boy for the girls. One fine May morning he's walking down a village street in Mauchline in Ayrshire, and coming to meet him was a nice rosy-cheeked country lass, a milkmaid, and she was carrying the milk with the old-fashioned yoke over her shoulders and a milk pail in each hand. Burns said, "Good morning, miss." She said, "Good morning, sir." He passed, then stopped and called back and said, "I don't suppose, miss, you know who I am?" "No, sir," she said, "I'm afraid I don't." "Well," I said, "I'm Robert Burns the poet." "Are you?" said she. "Ah, well then, I suppose I'd better put down my pails."
During the First World War, my father was involved in part-time soldiering. He was by profession a schoolmaster, and in the evenings and weekends, he commanded a local platoon of volunteers. As part of the duties of defence, they were detailed to defend the Anglesey end of the Britannia Tubular Bridge. The platoon consisted of loyal, honest and enthusiastic men, and were mostly small farmers or had some connections with farming. Many were the humorous incidents and stories that my father used to tell. However, there was one occasion when as a small boy I was privileged to spend the weekend at the army hutment with my father. He had asked for a volunteer to cook the Sunday dinner. Corporal John said that he could do some simple cooking, and he set about the task. Some hours later we sat to dinner, and my father was very apprehensive, for although the cooking stoves were out in the open air, the stench of burnt meat wafted strongly into the hutment. And indeed, alas, we had burnt beef and potatoes for our meal, followed by a rice pudding which was so stiff and overcooked that one could literally have used it for a cannonball. Corporal John had apparently used a whole 1-gallon standard issue enamel basin full of rice to prepare a pudding for 12 persons. And when the rice mixture swelled up in the cooking, it took 6 more like-sized enamel basins to contain it all. The platoon had enough rice pudding to last them the remainder of the week. Somehow I don't think that my father ever really enjoyed rice pudding from that day onwards.
I was born a Welsh ugly duckling, and God knows I'm still no swan. Now, thanks be to God, the chocolate box ideal of feminine charm is no longer valid. But for me, what matters still is that I was born the ugly, youngest afterthought in a family of beautiful sisters. Ugly, spoilt, impossible, and unspeakably sad. My formative years were shaped by envy. In a loving and warm home, I was secretly devoured by envy. I was wickedly jealous of my sisters' good looks, of the very fact that they'd been born before me, and had therefore been able to enjoy our darling mother for longer than I had. Envious of fair curly hair, of friendships, alliances. I had projecting teeth. My dead straight hair was cut inexpertly by my father in a donkey crop. I was so skinny that they called me Russian famine in our large stem family. But always, always my mother was comforting, and said my eyes were my redeeming feature.